Recording is on.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the governance discussion 4th of August. Today, we'll be going over the governance agenda, the proposal roundup to start, which is actually quite light this week. So, to start, we actually have a transfer of 400 Ether going from the mainnet base to DXgov, and that is used for both some swapper deposits as well as DXgov operations and the buyback, which was extended. Other than that, we have one worker proposal on mainnet, which is Kermit. And we actually have a proposal about updating Swapper ETH to 3.1. And I believe if you look at the Swapper site right now, or the Swapper 3.1, it's actually an unofficial build. But I believe once this gets deployed, the message should not show on Ether, on swapper.eth.link, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I don't know, John, if you could just clarify this. I think because I just went to the link of the IPFS hash in the proposal. And so when you go to that, I'm going to ipfs.io, /IPFS/ the hash. And that has the warning bar at the top that says, please go to swapper.eth. But I think according to Federico, that warning bar basically appears whenever you are visiting the site, not through swapper.eth. So that same release, when the proposal goes through and you access it on swapper.eth, that warning at the top will go away because you're on swapper.eth.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well as how it should work once it's actually deployed to swapper.eth. I think the main problem here, and I think this will probably end up getting addressed in the next release, is that when you do visit swapper.eth using, without the .link and you have MetaMask activated, it will take you to the IPFS instance of the site, but it changes the URL. So I think I'm not sure until it goes live, and I didn't look at exactly how this was implemented, but I assume that it will show up there as well, and that's, I think, less than ideal. So that'll probably get fixed in an upcoming release. But yeah, it should go away on swapper.eth, that link.
Awesome. And that's actually already all the proposals we have on mainnet. So if anyone wants to do some low gen boosting for their rep sync or something, it's a good opportunity. Although gas costs are high, so maybe not the ideal time right now. And then we have some other proposals live on the XDAI base. So we have buyback number 17 and 18 live on XDAI. We have a Discord rep boost for Sarniac, 2 worker proposals, Caden and Melanie. And SkyMine Labs has a reimbursement proposal up for some expenditures during EFCC Paris and the events surrounding that. And then moving on to some of the discussion items, unless there's something, I don't think there's much to talk about the XDAI proposals. So moving on to the discussion points, we actually, there's an update to GPV1 where I believe the solvers have changed. So to actually be able to do buyback orders, for example, mainnet, we actually need to update the solvers. So this actually means that temporarily we'll be unable to do buybacks on mainnet, and we'll have to do these on XDAI, where Kermit is already running an updated version of the solvers. But as it stands right now, we're not able to do buybacks on mainnet, and I'm not quite sure how that update would work.
Yeah, and I think and you link to this in the agenda. So there's a proposal to send 250 ETH, or a draft proposal that I think has not been submitted to Alchemy, to XDXDAO specifically to conduct the buyback. And that's because when we had last sent funds to XDXDAO, which is actually arriving tomorrow, there was only, I think, 75 ETH earmarked for the buyback, because we kind of assumed that the buyback at the time would be both on mainnet and XDAI. So now that we'll be conducting it through XDAI, we just need to transfer more ETH there. But the good thing about XDAI is, of course, it's 5 days for proposals and less gas costs. So it actually is cheaper for DXgov to do that. And it should be, and it's easy for people to kind of participate in and interact for that. In order to do this and switch, we actually do need to push a new release of Mesa.eth. And so I'm talking with, I think, Geronimo and Ross on how we can get that up.
Yeah, absolutely. And the proposal for the 250 ETH, I've actually already submitted it, but I submitted it at a low gas price. So hopefully that will be passing overnight or at some point in the future. And in other news, I've also actually reached 1% rep on mainnet. So it might also be worth considering eventually adding my address to the multi-sig so I can help submitting the transactions and working with the relayer to the multi-sig and submitting any transactions to bridge to XDAI or any future treasury diversification proposals. And then further discussion point is actually DXgov expenses, which Chris posted on the forum a couple of days ago, which is actually an overview of kind of like the expenses incurred up to end of July since beginning of the year. And I don't know, Chris, if you wanted to give a little update about that.
Yeah, so this was, I'm coming in on another screen here. Yeah, so this was, so we had previously done an update, I think it was February, and this is kind of long overdue, something I've been meaning to do. And part of the reason is because there's a lot of different moving parts with it, because there's a lot of discussion points that need to happen for like how you classify things. There's a lot of data gathering, and a lot of thing is more like manual. But I think it's, yeah, I wanted to do this to be able to give like a better understanding of where funds are going and where things are kind of being laid out. But I wanted to walk through, you can read the high level stuff from the post there, but I wanted to walk through some of the ways that like things were calculated just to be kind of transparent about like how things are being represented and that. So like to start with, and those who remember February will remember the colors. There are not as many colors elsewhere, but these were the categories or squads I was using to define the different fund expenditures. So I think that obviously like the product squads are pretty self-explanatory: DX Voice, BizDev, Contributor UX. And then I put DX Ventures, even though there's not, I don't think there's anyone that's full-time on that. It was something I think that we have been spending time on. So I wanted to include it to calculate some of that. And then like governance and ecosystem development security are a little catch-all, and it's difficult to define it. But the governance one in this definition does include people that like help on this call, operations, but also the DX vote and the product level point, just to include that there. And then the ecosystem development security is like things that are cross-product. And I also think the security element of this is going to become more important. So I think it makes sense to carve that out as something. But again, these are just like up for discussion. It's mostly just because like you have to categorize these and make the decisions. And so this is what used for this. Yeah, and then just like the high level kind of like total expenses paid out. So this is funds that have left DXDAO, right? So this is like looking at payments that have like already occurred, and you can see that over the 7 months of 2021, what we're kind of working with here. So about $162,000 a month that has been paid out. This is only ETH and DAI payments. It does not include any of the DXD stuff, which we'll touch on a little bit later, but this is only for ETH, DAI, USDC, or I think a USDT, any of the stablecoin payments there. And yeah, in this kind of what fits in all of this is there's kind of like three main sheets to check out. One is the contributor payouts. So this is simply like a list of all the payouts for all contributors over 2021. And I think there are like 138 different payouts to 33 different contributors. So these would be contributors that went in through the compensation guidelines here. And then for these, I did my best to try to like calculate these workers by their squad. So for a lot of the product squads, obviously, like most people are working full time on their product squad, so their cost, their salary goes almost entirely to the product squad. But there are some people that are working across different areas, and so I just used like kind of a simple percentage to distribute that, so we could get a little bit better idea of the cost. Would be happy to see comments on these that like are things that are changed or better. It was helpful for a couple people. I think Sky and Keenan are ones that they actually put the percentages in their worker proposal themselves. So it's easy to just kind of go in there and take that percentage. But that's like the big breakdown here in terms of contributors. You can see here, this is just our cost on a contributor basis for the 7 months. So about $106,000 a month in contributor salaries. And this is kind of where the breakdown is going here. So you can see, this is just the contributor component. This does not have the monthly totals on them. But the average you can see is about 106,000. And then there's other expenses, right, which is like non-contributor stuff. This is like a catch-all for all of those things. You can kind of see the breakdown here. This is like a similar format. It's just looking at, let me make this bigger. It's just kind of looking at all of the different expenses that have incurred that are not through contributors. So a lot of these are audits. Some of these are, there's a Tenderly subscription. We have the gas refunds is a big thing. It's about $7,500 a month. The DXgov, I mean, so things like Entre Casa. And then it also includes things including like the swapper incentives. And so I think this is something that was a cost and was kind of distributed out there. So you can see that's one of the big reasons why you do see like a big increase in swapper expenses in these 2 months there. But that's the other expenses there. And then for each of these, we like categorize them by a certain squad so that we could assign their amounts. So, and most of the audits are split up because the audits are like, they do typically when they're doing an audit, they're doing a couple different contracts that may be across squad, maybe one for swapper and one for aqua. So try to do the best to split them up there. And then I also did kind of try to do the best to come up with like a accounts payable. So this is basically like expenses incurred by DXgov that have not been paid out. So I think like a good example of this is Augusto's proposals that have actually been submitted and approved on chain by DXgov, but I think in his worker proposals, he's only getting paid through DXvote on Arbitrum. So it's like once the funds get there, he'll get paid, but that is actually like a cost that's kind of like incurred to DXgov. And so just kind of calculating that. And then there's also people who have like not submitted proposals or like things like that. And so I was just trying to do and then like, for instance, Nico's is in here. And so, you know, obviously like nothing is official until it's like paid out from DXgov on chain, but it is sometimes like helpful to do some like planning on what these other ones are coming up. And so, yeah, I think it just had that there. But that's where you would get this total number here, which is, so this is the total expenses, not including accounts payable, 162,000 monthly average broken out in that area. And then this is the total including accounts payable. You can see it's like 179,000 a month in that range. And then I guess the one other thing, there are two other things I would say quickly before I open up to questions is I did also look at some of the Omen Squad funding to like estimate how much like that had cost, is like the same way for the swapper rewards here. So again, these might be wrong, but I think it was like there's been about 315,000 of subsidies or like Omen Squad has had, and I think it's really hard to calculate on the XDAI the amount of how the LP positions are estimated, but it's probably like, you know, I said like $50,000. So that would mean there's, you know, over the last 6 months, there's been about a 50K subsidy to Omen Squad. This can kind of adjust there, but just kind of trying to get an understanding of what that cost is to DXgov. And then the last thing I'd say is like I also included the DX Voice cost here, which has not been incurred, but like from DXgov that has been sent out of the treasury. And then I put that on the 2 different months to kind of show that it was more of a spread out cost that was not kind of anything all at once. But yeah, that's kind of where things there. There's a post up there, so enjoy any feedback, but wanted to see if anyone had questions or comments.
Yeah, just wanted to say, they look very good. Looks awesome. Awesome to check it out and see that all this information has to be made public. We should share it around and spread it around to DXgov holders, like communicate the best way we can. And regarding my payment proposal, it needs to happen on DXvote, and I'm going to submit it to XDAI using the contribution reward scheme. But the idea was to use the wallet scheme, but it's going to take a bit more till it was submitted. And I'm already like 4 months on of work, kind of nearly that on DXgov on approved work. So I'm going to be submitting that this week using DXvote on XDAI.
I'm just wondering what falls under total expenses for each product. Is it just the salaries or?
Yeah, so it's the contributors and then the other expenses, right? So these are like the 2 big ones. So you can see like this is just salaries here. And so about $106,000 a month in just salaries as opposed to 162 for total. And then the things in the other expenses, this is like the things that were on this sheet, which is like gas refunds, or the Omen website was something, for instance. Yeah, there's different things, a lot of audit costs, right? The audit costs are big extra expense for the products.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say that this is really great, and like we should be grounding a lot of our decisions like with this data, right, and keeping this in mind. So it's great to have.
I guess, is there anything that's like surprising or like maybe jumps out at people?
The just one thing would be the swapper rewards. It's very difficult to put that into like swapper team costs, right? Like it's not even, you could say it's in marketing, you could say it's something else, but it's actually like, if you look at what DeFi projects do, it's a totally different thing. It's like, all right, mint a token and give it out to your community. Like it's not really a cost. Like Uniswap doesn't. It's like,
this is just the ETH. This is just the ETH. Right. So like we didn't mint the ETH. That was like ETH from the treasury.
Yeah, and DXD from the treasury, I guess, right? But is that really a swapper cost?
Yeah, and that's what I think is the right move. It's actually not something like just for like the farming campaigns were not just about just swapper, right? There's like a whole kind of DXD component to that. So yeah, I think it was a good cost, but like I think it was a cost.
Yeah.
And I think like the cost of swapper token incentives is like the cost structure of that is much different, because you kind of said you're like minting it, but like that is, I think it is the cost. And I think the same thing like for Omen Squad, actually, the funding there, it's like the same thing. I think these are good costs. Like we need to be figuring out how to be promoting and doing that. But yeah, how they're classified or like categorized is a discussion. And it's more of like, what do we assign? Like, how do we assign something, like interpret these numbers? And if we're like aware of the context and what goes into them, then it shouldn't, hopefully it's not as confusing.
Yeah, I could imagine like a more granular version, like separating like incentive and marketing costs from like contributor costs, right? I mean, not criticizing this because you've already done a ton of work here. I'm just like, that is when you look at the first thought I had was when I look at the 7-month average of the Swapper and Omen. I was a little surprised that Swapper was so close because it's like a less of a head count on the Swapper squad, right? So, but that's because of the the other expenses.
Yeah, actually, I think I have in the post. I think there was actually a breakdown of it by. Oh no. I had it somewhere because in this one you can look at like what's the audit and what's the incentives, and I think that was like the big thing was I also think Swapper had a lot more audit cost. If you look at that here,
that would make sense because Omen I don't think has really had.
Right.
There's only like one small audit that we've paid for an Omen so far.
Yeah. So here's the audit cost. Omen is just one there for 3,000 versus. Or 2 versus Swapper has 37,000.
Yeah, like one thing we should think about is to actually like try to automate it, like the whole process of creating that report. It was very like manual work, probably done by Chris. And one thing we could do is add like those bucket tags inside our like alchemy proposal. So like in the future we could actually like scrap all the proposals with those important tags and then actually have like a application which like has actually like a dynamic live view of our expenditures.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. The two thoughts of that are, one, I do think like maybe this general format is the way to go when you think about just like the contributor payouts and there's other expenses and we're just like kind of adding to this. So even just adding to this manual, I think in the meantime shouldn't be as. But I completely agree on wanting to like automate this long term. I think one of the key difficulties in automating it is making these like game time decisions on like how things are categorized. Like just think the Swapper incentives are a perfect example. Like, and then even for contributors, like, you know, it would be great if we had like people percentages in the proposals or something like that. And then maybe when we're actually like submitting requests for like other expenses, we have some way of like doing that in a format that can be like reproducible and easily scraped. But yeah, I mean, I think like this should be like, I love the idea of like when Chris was saying like this should be public, like we should have this as like a dynamic graph, like on DX, like I don't know, on DX.eth, like anyone can look at it at any time, and like I think that's all part of the governance product.
Yeah, exactly, and also like the decision of where where a specific proposal should go could also be part of the draft proposal, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's probably some work, but there might be some opportunities if and when we finally get to like doing the payroll system and with governance 2.0, you could categorize things in metadata around the proposals that could make like automation possible. But yeah, of course, there's always going to be some generalization and details lost when you try to do that. But we could kind of make, take steps towards automation.
Cool. Any other thoughts? I agree with others, but I think this is like kind of ground conversations. And so maybe it's something to come back to. The post has a link to the Excel sheet. I think it's uploaded on IPFS. You should be able to download all the data. I also I think there's at least, if we're talking about scraping this, like this does include, I did try to include the proposal ID as much as possible in the proposal link. So I think there's a way to, if we have a better system to include it. So cool. All right, that was it.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Chris.
Chris, I'm just wondering, like, I was thinking, like, how can we maybe use this data? Like, can we, what are some steps that we can take? I don't know. We now have overview Like, are we spending more money somewhere than we should have? Should we like decrease some spending or increase in some areas? Like, I'm just curious, like, what steps can we maybe take?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something to monitor. Obviously, like the other side of this is how important are each of these buckets to DXDAO and how much do we want to be devoting resources to that, right? So like devoting resources to governance is important, but like there's probably not like an immediate revenue opportunity there. So we have to kind of think about like, well, what's the investment case for that? But like in a lot of ways, governance makes everything more efficient. So if we can improve things there, that we can pay down. I think for the broadly speaking, I actually don't think anything in here is too surprising. I think especially when you look at the swapper subsidy cost is the reason that's a little bit more. I think Omen is the kind of the oldest product, and Swapper and Aqua are kind of some big some expenses, and I think we're kind of spread out. So I don't really know if there's something that we can do with this now in terms of changing the allocation here. I think we need to think more about like where are our priorities and like what deserves DXDAO investment.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you did most of the work, I guess, Chris, for putting this together, as well as
when we had like there was like 4 or 5 like different things I've been working on, and then like I kind of just put them together in the last week because it ends up you end up having to like compile the data in a way that you're like trying to work with. So I actually think this is somewhat easy to keep doing. As I said, you can just like 10 or 15, so maybe even Ali do it in the meantime or something. But I think long term we need like a way to automate this.
Yeah, and I think another way that like kind of the responsibility and work should be distributed is I think squad leaders should be, responsible for contributing to the like tracking their own squad,
right,
basically, and helping you or whoever is doing this to like review and compile the reports.
Yeah, and I could have actually even done that with this one. Like I probably should have. Like there are questions about the incentives or the Omen Squad funding where I was like, I'm not exactly sure, but like I was just trying to get this framework out. But yeah, I've been talking with Dave about what we can kind of do with this like long term
Yeah, because in terms of planning, it makes sense too that the squad leaders should be thinking about this in terms of like what are they going to need into the future, so that that feeds into recruiting and bringing new people on, and that's other kind of budget planning items.
But I think like squad leaders could look at like when they're going through that process, you can kind of like look, oh, this is what Omen did the last 6 months when it had like it went through these processes of it launched on a new chain, it is undergoing a token, like that means it'll have like an increase of these amount of costs. So like there is a lot of knowledge that we can share from this past that can kind of inform what we're doing going forward, like across the different products and squads.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and also like most of the squad leads are actually like already hybrid, so it's a very like I think everyone is very, very busy, and like that's why I'm actually like really trying to request to automate like all the data here, or like at least we should try to do that as soon as possible. Just because I think the squad leads have a shit tons to do.
XDAI is a challenge, was like a big part of it too. XDAI and Alchemy are like real problems. Like they're talking about like governance work. Like this is like, it'd be nice to have like easy export CSV, for instance.
All right, guys. Guess we can move on to the next topic, unless there are any questions still. All right. Well, next topic is actually ETH Lisbon sponsorship. So I think by now everyone already saw, or at least had the chance to take a look at the sponsorship opportunities. And there are mainly 3 tiers remaining. The first one is bronze at $2,500. Well, actually, no, it's actually in euros, so 2,500 euros. The second one is silver at 10,000 euros, and the third one is gold at 20,000 euros. And I would say the main difference between the three is kind of bronze is on the one side is like a support that gives like 2 attendee tickets and one item into the swag bag. And silver is actually where some more stuff comes into, so you have a bit more marketing exposure. And most of all, you're able to host a bounty at the hackathon, including some extra tickets as well. And on the gold side, you're able to hold 2 bounties. So we actually already inquired with them about the sponsorships, and they were actually also interested in hearing some ideas from us in terms of what kind of bounties we would like to host at the conference. And so if anyone has any ideas, feel free to shoot them my way. We already had some ideas around Omen, for example, some automated smart contracts for liquidity pools, or perhaps doing something for DAO-to-DAO interactions, some data viz or accountability stuff. But there's still not been a decision made, of course. We would have to submit something on chain. I'm not sure if anyone here has any thoughts or something they want to share, what they think could be good or which option could be good to do.
One question, just basic question, is do we know what the size of this conference will be? I think I heard somebody say 150 to 200 attendees, but that was just like somebody in a chat somewhere. I don't know what the what the venue is and whatnot.
Yeah, I don't actually have any firm numbers on this as well. I could also just base it on previous ETH hackathons, right? Which I guess are around the number you mentioned. I think they also just announced ETH Lisbon, right? So I'm not even sure if they really know how many they will have. But yeah, that's a good point. I can check with them to see if they have some expectations of how many people will attend.
Yeah, if we could just ask the organizers that we're in touch with, like how many, I think it's just a good thing to kind of present with any kind of budget request, right? Because it'll be some measure of what the conference will be and who will be exposed to.
It says in the document that they're expecting 150 attendees.
Oh, nice. Thanks.
And I guess that's 150 attendees to this specific conference. But I think the idea with, I guess, the Lisbon time in general is that there'll be other things going on in Lisbon that'll kind of contribute to this Ethereum atmosphere.
Right, yeah. So, well, I guess the next step is touching base to see which sponsorships are still even available, because I believe they're actually doing some selection based on what type of bounties people propose. Then I guess we can just throw up a forum post and put it to a vote on chain and see what comes out. Unfortunately, we can't have multiple choice votes on chain, so we'll have to go to one. But
you will likely have to tell them, like, in the next few days probably, that you want to take one of these sponsorships. By the time we do a proposal and then it might pass, I don't think there's going to be any, because sponsorship is open.
Yeah, for sure. I already inquired about the gold sponsorship. So I believe there was a small informal poll in the DX chat where gold kind of won. And the reply to me saying that we were interested in eventually getting the gold sponsorship was to send over which bounties we would host, because they have apparently a couple of candidates who already want to sponsor the gold tier. So that's kind of where it's at. But they are also already aware of the fact that it would take us some time to do the proposal on chain, and they said they can reserve us a spot. That's not a problem, for 8 days or however long it takes us to put through the vote.
Yeah, I was initially thinking that the gold sponsor would be a good thing to do to go, especially if we're doing like a DX retreat alongside it and we're going to have a big presence. Like I thought that might be good messaging. I think alternatively, though, maybe it's better to spend funds on specific hackathon prizes. And like, Chris was mentioning, maybe more of this is going to be about like the surrounding events, and maybe we should focus more on that. I sort of just think like that if we're going to do something, though, it's good to go like strong on it, right? So like I thought if we're doing the sponsorship. But then the other question I had is, what is really the difference between the gold and the silver? Because are the bounties restricted based on your sponsorship, or are you, because the gold says host 2 bounties up to 5K, silver says host a bounty. So are we not allowed to add more bounties if we don't have a sponsorship to go along with it? That'd be one question. And then the other thing I wasn't sure about is like, what does recruiter on site actually mean? Because and like, what's the difference between, you know, us and Melanie all just being there? So.
Yeah, no. So for the bounties, I think I read it the same way as you. So you're actually restricted based on sponsorships, right? And I'll shoot him an email about the recruiter on site to clarify what exactly that is. But I think maybe at hackathons, I guess, don't they typically just give out tickets to hackers? It's not like they sell tickets for attendees, right? Because most of the event is just hacking, right? So perhaps it's like
they might restrict it to just people who are planning to hack. Yeah,
exactly. So it might just be a special ticket for people to come in or something. But
which is why we're enrolling Melanie in a 10-week boot camp starting tomorrow.
Exactly.
I would ask about the bounties too, because I don't see any reason why they would restrict the number. Like if people wanted to add more prizes, why would they restrict that, right? Like, it's good for the hackathon. So.
Yeah, in my experience on previous, I just want to say that in my experience on previous ETH global hackathons, when you sponsor the event, you can have technical members with the sponsor badge there. They say, I know, 2 or 3 technical members, right, of DXgov, that they will be acting as judges and judging technically all the bounties and all the challenge and everything that you presented as a sponsor, right? So it wouldn't make we should have their technical members attending, but later we can change the badge if we, for example, I know, only 3 of us are allowed to be there at the same time. We can give the badge to someone else, enter there as a DXgov member, and be part of the event for some time. That is my experience on ETH global events.
Yeah, sounds good. I guess I'll just circle back with them to address these couple of points, and then eventually, I guess we should make a decision quite quick as well, as of course these are also limited. But as already mentioned before, there are also a lot of events around. So I guess even if we don't go with gold with them, there are also other opportunities during that time period to get some exposure, maybe host some after parties or other stuff we can do. But I'll circle back, and then I'll probably post the forum post once I have more information from their side as well. And then moving on to the last agenda point, there's actually a call tomorrow, I guess, with Prime DAO, who posted a proposal on the forum about a potential participation of DX Ventures into their token offering, which I believe would be for $100K US for 0.5% of their token, part of which would be unlocked immediately and the rest of which would vest over 2 years. And Prime DAO are also like a DeFi DAO focused primarily on 4 products, I believe. And I believe Sky already commented with some further potential collaboration opportunities there. And for anyone interested, I would just suggest maybe to take a look at the forum post before the call tomorrow. And I believe there's a call tomorrow at 4 p.m. UTC with Prime DAO to kind of discuss potential collaboration opportunities and also explore whether or not DX Ventures has an interest in participating in this opportunity. And I believe some of the DXDAO members also met some of the Prime DAO members during the DAOist. I believe Sky was one of them, right?
Yeah, sorry, you broke up for a second. What was the last thing you said?
Sorry, I was just saying, I believe you and Nylon met with them as well at the DAOist, right? You had a chat with them.
Oh, yeah, and Tammy as well. But we talked with Luke and Felipe a bit, but for like a while about just like DAO to DAO relations and things we could do. A few ideas are outlined in the post. Some additional ideas are added, but I agree with like the overall framing of it really makes sense to figure out the things and come up with ideas that we can collaborate on. But to move forward on those, just like, in the business world, you often don't like start working with another company until there's some economic alignment between the two parties. And so even if it's not 100,000, or maybe it's a smaller amount, or maybe the investments is not the appropriate thing, maybe the investments instead for DXD for Prime Token or something like, but if there's some way to align two communities prior to create like incentive and ownership in each other's work. So like, if all of a sudden we've invested in their entity, they're going to be far more inclined to create a pool on Swapper than if there's just two parties that have nothing connecting them, right? And so we've seen this with some other DAOs in the past, but things seem to not move forward unless there's some economic reason why it makes sense to work together. And so we can start with collaboration as well, but aligning interests is a good way to start, I think, too.
Yeah, it's also important to know who is behind Prime DAO, right? Like and most importantly, like who's building products there. What are they clearly like long-term incentivized, like sticking to Prime DAO, and what are like the roadmaps of the products and stuff like that.
Yeah, they have a very nice interactive deck where the logo spins, right?
Yeah, and I agree with these points. Like the ideas are good, I think, but it's like worth noting that they already raised money for a token, and there were previous attempts to work with them. I think the main concern I would have too is like, who is actually building stuff? I think that was one of the things that held us back initially, is that they didn't really have people building much early on.
Yeah, I think you can. Well, they've definitely seemed to change path from like the initial idea of like this aggregator, which was Total or whatever. But they have, I think you can see in the extended deck, like a bunch of the products that they have been working on and building out. And there's 4 pretty interesting things there that are related to us and the DAO space in general. And so, yeah, someone from the community has built and designed those products and those things.
Yeah, I looked at the post. I haven't looked at the deck yet, right? So like the 4 products were the LBP launcher, the ratings, the DAO to DAO stuff. But what is actually live? Do people know what's live and usable today?
Yeah, I would check out the deck maybe.
Right, but so this is my experience with Prime DAO, right? Because they launched like 6 months, end of last year, right? They were particularly good at marketing materials, right? But I thought they were rather weak when it came to execution. And I think we should be careful, like not to just see a deck and think, oh, this sounds great, and move forward. We need to look at what's underneath.
100%.
Yeah, just in the deck, just quickly,
It looks nice, but it's empty. I mean, if it looks like but it's empty, there is nothing there. They are just selling us something that shines, and you open it, there is nothing. So what are we going to contribute? What are we going to collaborate? What are we going to work with? With nothing, which just a nice deck. So
yeah, so one way is to tell them what we would like to see as like a collaboration point, right? Being proactive about clear goals together is something which we can consider.
I mean, I think that's what we're trying to figure out now. So I think it'd be helpful for the conversation tomorrow to figure out what those goals are. And I think to figure out what those goals are, it's worth it to like look through the materials and figure out what could work. Yeah.
And I guess my biggest thought about this is like it's a $20 million valuation. So does the value match that valuation, do we think?
I think no, but I don't think that's the question asked right now.
Yeah, I think for this, okay, so we've been talking about like what is DX Ventures, and this is kind of coming in under that hood potentially. So we've been thinking about, okay, incubation projects, which are like very beginning level projects. That's clearly not what Prime DAO is. There's like a history there, and they've kind of had this like rolling, changing, community ownership. So obviously, I think, yeah, it's important for us to like get to know Prime DAO and see exactly like who are the stakeholders that we're going to be working with. And when I say that, I'm almost mostly prefacing this off of like not just DX Ventures working with incubation projects. It's also like a place for us to like partner with interests that would be beneficial to our DAO. So that would be appreciated if we can look at the pitch deck and say, is this something that we want to partner with Prime DAO on? And like, if there's really nothing there, there's nothing there, and we can just like move on. But if there's something that we could work with together with them on, and it may open other doors for other potential collaborations with their developers, let's talk about that more and see where we could see some alignment. And then we can get to like the specifics of, what we'd want to swap with one another if that's necessary at all.
Yeah, so well, like one clear thing we could do is like collaborate on Aqua. Aqua is not only like a fixed price auction sale, and like an auction platform, but rather basically an ICO platform, and they have experience in like those liquidity bootstrapping pools. So one way one project they could like take on is basically merging their LBP contracts with Balancer into Aqua. That's like a clear thing, which would be amazing for us, because that would be like the third ICO type of sale on Aqua. And
another thing that I think would be a pretty clear beneficial collaboration would be under the DAO to DAO relationship stuff, working on co-liquidity provision between DAOs.
Exactly.
Okay, so those are like two good starting points, and I think they were mentioned. I don't know about Aqua, but I saw something in the post. So I'm going to look back, and Sky will probably too, and just make sure that's like referenced so Luke's aware. So when we talk about it tomorrow, maybe that's something we could kind of discuss more and figure out if there's something there.
Yeah, Ross is pointing out like that it's kind of unclear whether they would be kind of positioned as competitors to Aqua, or if there is opportunities there to work together.
This is an issue in our entire space. Like theoretically, and I asked this question in the channel or somewhere, should we, like with OneHive and people that are building HoneySwap, why wouldn't we work like with them? Like, because there's no such thing really as a competitor, because everything we build, they can take the exact same thing and we can do the same to them. So why wouldn't we work with them instead of like all build separately, like, and do double work? And so even if like, yeah, if Prime DAO's LBP thing is a competitor because it's a different way to do an ICO than our fixed price auction on Aqua, like why, if they can just take whatever we make and put it into their platform, like don't you think it makes sense to align interests and do it together?
I think we should be open to collaborations. Yeah, I think just because something looks like a competitor at first is not a reason to like not try to collaborate.
Right, like
I'm saying if it is a competitor, I'm saying we should collaborate.
Yeah, it sounds like you both are saying the same thing.
Right?
Yeah, like to further the space, basically. If there's like, two heads are better than one, that kind of mentality. Sorry, Geronimo, did you want to say something?
Yeah, like I think it would be beneficial for us if they would integrate like the LBP functionality into Aqua. The fact that we have this modular system in place, and we will audit it soon, means they could, if they're like smart, or depending on where they want to go with Prime launch or whatever the product is called, they could use the contracts, right? Like it doesn't mean like our stuff is completely open source. They can do it already right now if it's helpful for their platform. Because if they would adopt our system, they could also like include fixed price sale and stuff like that. So it would be helpful for both, right?
And I think in the HoneySwap example, they didn't want to collaborate, right? Like I think we tried, if I remember correctly.
Well, this is another scenario where, like, if you did a token swap and you had incentive in each other's like communities, you'd most likely be more likely to work together, right?
Was that discussed with HoneySwap? I guess, yeah, I don't know if we ever discussed that.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the same topic with any other community and any DAO that we're gonna potentially work with. It's like, why work together if you have no like alignment with each other, whether it's Gnosis or OneHive or Prime DAO?
Yeah, so specifically those teams who are building competitive things, it is difficult. I think everyone like sees the reason why, but like I envision partnerships like with Radical or like even with Pocket Network. Not that we will do a partnership yet. That's up to like DXgov governance to decide. But doing partnerships with teams who are like improving things from our side, like Radical is like decentralized code collaboration. That makes totally sense, right? Pocket Network replacing Infura, that makes total sense. And it's actually like a no-brainer in my point of view. So I don't think like we're just saying no to everything. I think we're just very conservative about like partnering with competitors. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's inherent friction when you try to work together, but there's competing strategic interests, right? And I think we've tried to, we've been open to it. I don't think we're like inherently closed off on that. I think we've made some pretty big efforts in the past to work with projects that could be competitive, but it just you hit snags, I think, because incentives kind of run counter.
Also, like a very important point we need to make is the guild will fix that, right? Like then the guild can be like decide sovereignly to do partnerships with other projects who are like who have the printer. DXgov has no printer right now, and I think the guilds with the product tokens will have like such an easier way of partnering because they have a decent amount of tokens.
DXDAO has DXD token for this reason. Like Augusto says, like we should be using it. Like what if DXD holders don't want to use DXD token for like partnerships and token swaps and alignment? What makes you think that Swapper token holders or Omen token holders are going to want to use Omen token or Swapper token for the same cause?
I think you're painting an inaccurate picture here. I think it seems like you're making an assumption that like people don't want to make deals, right? And like, let me be clear. I want to make deals.
No, I'm just saying that Geronimo just said we're not in a position to make deals with a token, and once we have Omen token.
Wait, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the guilds will make those like things easier. Like if we would have the Omen guild ready in place when like Gnosis wanted to work together, it would be easier because DXD was like super undervalued, and we didn't want to like sell 10% of our tokens, like extremely cheaply.
I think that's a good example with what happened specifically with Omen, because also that was like their main interest is the collaboration over Omen, right? So Omen token would have made a lot of sense, right? Versus DXD, which kind of references lots of our different areas of interest and products. But if we had something where it was some sort of locking, where like, of course, we have to focus about the price, or we're worried about the price, and so we don't want people like dumping our tokens and stuff like that. Wouldn't it be okay to do a swap when it's like, obviously we're taking their tokens and we're not just like with the work token, we're not going to turn around and sell them. The point is to like have alignment of interests. Would that be reasonable?
That's directed towards Geronimo, right? I agree with it. Like,
or whoever.
I think
I don't know. I'm just opening the question.
So yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody here is against the idea of aligning interests and doing deals, right? I haven't heard that from anybody in this group. I think there's questions as to like the quality of who we're doing a deal with and the quality of the deal, right?
Definitely.
So,
and I think that's
so
important.
I mean, have you guys looked at, I mean, Tammy, I don't know if you were around, but Sky, you were involved with some of the stuff we were doing with PrimeDAO pretty early on, right? Like with Liray. You know, we made attempts, and and I don't know, I think there's a lot of questions here because they already raised money, right? And this is framed more in the forum as like asking for funding, right?
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I think that's just because that's how they initially approached, like just when they talked with Skyna and myself and Nylon, but that didn't really, we weren't necessarily thinking of it like that. So I think it's just kind of the opening discussion point, and that there needs to be more discussion as to whether there's even interest in some sort of alignment that may not be like an investment, because I don't really personally see the reason to just invest in, like I said, I thought DX Ventures was more like an incubator, plus maybe partnerships. But I think with partnerships, we need to find more alignment than just like giving money. But that's my personal opinion. But I thought maybe we could look more specifically at like what we can work with them on to kind of just keep collaborations open with other DAO communities, and if there's something meaningful there.
Yeah, definitely. I think it makes sense. We just gotta do the due diligence at the end. Like first see if there's something that's interesting, and then do the due diligence.
Yeah, like in tomorrow's call, will he go like or will the team go through the projects? Like I'm specifically interested in like what they're building, because that's the most important part of that. Yeah. And
so you
his
should
Dog post was very like, I mean, yeah, there was like those pitch decks, but I would like to go a little more deeper into like how they want to earn money, how they make profits with those things.
You should write those exact questions in the forum thread so that they're ready to be answered during the call.
I agree. All right.
All right, guys, we're also running up on the hour. So for anyone who's interested, the call is tomorrow at 4 p.m. UTC. And if there are no other questions, thank you very much for joining the governance call, and have a great evening if you're based in Europe.